Hey there everybody, how's it going? BOJoeKO here, and welcome to my 2013-2014 season preview for the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, I spent a good bit of time making this video, so I hope all you guys will enjoy, especially those of my subscribers who are big Philadelphia Flyers fans like myself. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is looking at all the big off-season moves by the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as some major key moments that happened during this offseason. And then, using NHL 13, we will be taking a look at the roster for the Flyers, potential people that could make this team, as well as all the line setups, or the possible line setups, that the Flyers could use for this upcoming 2013-2014 fall NHL season. So without further ado, let's get started with the big off-season moves. Okay, so if we want to start out with the biggest off-season moments for the Philadelphia Flyers organization, it definitely would concern the two buyout clauses that were initiated this year because of the new NHL agreement. So the Flyers bought out the contracts of both Danny Briere and Ilya Bryzgalov, adding to the buyout penalty now, along with $100,000, I think, from Oskar Bartulis. So we lose a forward, we lose a goalie. Danny Briere just was not turning out the player he was the past couple of years. He's been having great playoff runs, obviously because his nickname is Mr. Playoffs, but his regular season performance has been steadily declining over the years. And Ilya Bryzgalov, I mean, the contract was just too big of a contract to handle. The money, it was just being not spent in a very good way, so they had to get rid of Ilya Bryzgalov, and that was basically one of the biggest signings of this offseason. Now, to go along with the other big signings, obviously the signing of Vinny Lecavalier, obviously that brings a great second-line center to this organization, as well as an extension and the injury to Claude Giroux. So Claude Giroux got a contract extension, I think, for the maximum, I think it's 8 years, 6 or 8 years for Giroux, but then obviously getting injured in golfing, of all things. Obviously his injury hopefully will not deter him too much from beginning this offseason, but hopefully Giroux can come back from his injury and hopefully get back on track to where he left off 2 seasons ago. And lastly, getting backup Ray Emery to have a goalie tandem with Steve Mason and Ray Emery this year should definitely be something of interest to watch. So now, with all those off-season moves taken care of, let's take a look at the roster now for the Philadelphia Flyers, starting with the forwards. So if we take a look at the forwards for this coming season, the Flyers do currently have 13 forwards still signed for this coming year, and that is including Scott Laughton. And only the reason I'm including him in there is because his contract is worth more than a regular two-way contract is worth. He is signed for $1.1 million, so that's the only reason that I am including Scott Laughton into the forwards list. But here are the current forwards for this coming season: Scott Hartnell, Vinny Lecavalier, Jakub Voracek, Wayne Simmonds, Claude Giroux, Braden Shen, Max Talbot, Sean Couturier, Scott Laughton, Matt Reed, Zach Rinaldo, Jay Rosehill, and Adam Hall. So before I name off the defensemen that the Flyers currently have signed for this coming year, I would think I should go in depth about some of these contracts. Now, everybody in Philadelphia should know that about the Chris Pronger situation and his $4.9 million contract. Obviously, the only reason that they still have him signed and have not gotten rid of him yet is because of that contract bonus that the Flyers get for having Chris Pronger on long-term injury reserve. Now, Matt Walker, who was also placed on long-term injury reserve, is an unrestricted free agent this year, and the Flyers have yet to sign him. I'm not sure if they will, and they'll lose out on that bonus that they get, but I think it would benefit the Flyers if they did sign Matt Walker and then placed him on long-term injury reserve to get that bonus, which they got last year from having him on there. So now on this website, it does say the Flyers do have 10 defensemen still signed for this coming year, but I think I'm only going to name the defensemen that you could possibly see this year: Kimmo Timonen, Mark Streit, Braden Coburn, Andres Mazzaros, Luke Shen, Nicholas Grossman, Eric Gustafsson, Bruno Gervais, Oliver Lauritsen. And finally, if we take a look at the goaltending duo for the Philadelphia Flyers this coming year, we have Ray Emery, and Steve Mason. Now, although they did play a limited number of games for the Flyers last season and for the past couple of years, I am going to name some of the players who you could possibly see once again make it onto this Flyers team and play a limited number of games. These players would be Eric Wellwood, Jason Aikson, Ty McGinn, Nick Cousins, Oliver Lordson, Brandon Manning, and Eric Gustafson. Now, the reason I included Lordson and Eric Gustafson into this is just because of the fact that I'm not entirely sure what the Philadelphia Flyers are going to do with their defensive situation. And obviously, they have way too many defensemen signed. They have way too many defensemen that they need. And who knows who could be the top 6 defensemen on this team. So that's the reason I included Oliver Lordson and Eric Gustafson into this category. So with the help of NHL 13, I have set up the Flyers offense to what I think it will most be like this season. So even though the Flyers did sign Vinny Lecavalier this offseason, I still think the first line is going to consist of Scott Hartnell, Claude Giroux in the center, and Jakub Voracek on the right wing. Now with the second line, it does vary up a little bit. Now that Vinny Lecavalier will be the top second line center on this team, I think that the Flyers will move Braden Shen over to the wing and play alongside of Vinny Lecavalier and Wayne Simmonds on the right wing. Now, another thing that could happen is they could move Braden Shen down to the third line to play the third line center and move Matt Reed up to the second line, but I still think the third line is going to consist of Matt Reed, Max Talbot, and Sean Couturier. Now, as we get to the fourth line, we know Zach Rinaldo and Adam Hall will be playing the fourth line. However, that third spot on the fourth line could be an open door for guys like Jay Rosehill, Eric Wellwood, Ty McGinn, Jason Aikson, and Nick Cousins. Who knows who they are going to put down there on that fourth line, or it could be somebody who I have not even named in there. But if you wanted my own personal opinion, I think it would be either Ty McGinn or Scott Lawton who would take that fourth line position in there on that team. So now as we move on to the defense, it was kind of a tough decision for me to line up the defense in a way that I think it would be most likely to happen. Now, Timonen and Luke Schenn did play together last year, so I think that the Flyers would definitely pair those guys up again. And now, as we get to the second pair, Mark Streit and probably Andreas Mazaros would be lining up together. And then on the third pair, I have Braden Coburn and Eric Gustafson. I think Eric Gustafson is probably the most top 6 ready defenseman for the Philadelphia Flyers to have on this team. He's shown it year after year after year, and I think it's time that the Flyers do give him a shot on that top 6. However, I'm still not overly positive on what the outcome could be with Braden Coburn. A lot of teams have trade interest in Braden Coburn, and I do think the Flyers will eventually trade Braden Coburn to a team, possibly. I think the Flyers would trade Braden Coburn to a team like the Edmonton Oilers because they have shown in the past great interest in the defenseman like Braden Coburn. So who knows what they could do there for that defensive core in Philadelphia. And obviously, no questions really to be asked in the back end for the Philadelphia Flyers in goaltending. Obviously, Steve Mason and Ray Emery will be getting a good amount of split starts this season. I believe that the Flyers will roll with whoever is the hot goalie at the time. If Ray Emery is performing well this year, then obviously they will continue to start Ray Emery. If Steve Mason is going to be having a very good season, they're going to start Steve Mason. It's all going to be on the fact that who is the hotter goalie at this time. Now, that is what I think they should do, but what I really think they will do is they will play Steve Mason more often than they will Ray Emery, just because Steve Mason is younger and the Flyers do want to see what they have in Steve Mason. Even though he's had played 6 or 7 games last year and did perform pretty well, I still think the Flyers are going to test out Steve Mason highly this year and play him more often than they will Ray Emery. Throughout all the struggles last year, one of the biggest positives for the Philadelphia Flyers last year was definitely their power play. And I think with the addition of Vinny Lecavalier this year, I think their power play is going to even have a bigger impact this year. Now, even though Vinny Lecavalier is going to be playing the second line during 5-on-5, I do believe that he will get first line power play time, playing alongside of Jakub Voracek and Scott Hartnell as his wingers. Now, the Flyers do have a tendency to put Claude Giroux on the point, which I will agree with, although that position could be switched out, Hartnell and Giroux putting Giroux on the wing, and having Mark Streit and Kimmo Timonen up there for the defense, but I still think that the Flyers will put Claude Giroux on the point during that first line power play. And then the second line power play, I think it will be Matt Reed, Braden Shen, and Wayne Simmons, along with Mark Streit and Andres Mazaros. Now, one of the biggest questions this year for the Philadelphia Flyers is their very good possibility of combinations for their penalty kill. Now, I had a very hard time of trying to figure out what their penalty kill could be this year, so I have it set up as this: Claude Giroux with Braden Shen with Coburn and Timonen, and Max Talbot with Sean Couturier with Luke Shen and Andres Mazaros. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Vinny Lecavalier was on the penalty kill. If he was, then I could see him being on that penalty kill as well. However, the Flyers do have a very good range of options which they could choose from for the penalty kill because of all the great defensive players that they have on this team. I took out Wayne Simmons just because I believe Couturier and Talbot and Giroux and Shen are much better defensive killers than Wayne Simmons is, but he's another person who could be on this penalty kill. Like I said, the amount of possibilities they have for their penalty kill are very, very wide. Now that we have taken a look at the roster and the possible line setups for the Philadelphia Flyers this year, now we have to answer some big questions and things that the fans will have to be on the lookout this year for this upcoming season. And starting off with number one, it's definitely going to be the impact of Claude Giroux, Jakub Voracek, and newcoming Vincent Lecavalier. We'll have to see how good of an impact Claude Giroux will make coming off of his injury, and we could have to see if he can have a rebound season. Even though he was a point-a-game player last year, we have to see if he can get back to his 2012 performance in that season with over 90-some points. Jakub Voracek, we have to see if he is going to have another amazing season like he did last year, scoring more goals than he did in the shortened season than he did all last year in 2012. And we'll have to see if Vinny Lecavalier still has it in him to get the job done on that second line, playing with amazing players like Giroux and Voracek. So we'll have to see what the impact of those players will be. The next thing that we're going to have to be on the lookout for is if Sean Couturier can have a good rebound off of his sophomore slump season. Sean Couturier did not have a very good season last year at all after coming off an amazing rookie season, especially in the playoffs, doing an amazing job of guarding Evgeny Malkin during that first round versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll have to see if Sean Couturier can finally have a breakout season in this league and play amazing defense and maybe put in some goals on offense every now and then. Probably the most biggest question that the Flyers will have to deal with this season is definitely the questions on defense. We'll have to see if the defense can keep it together this year, stay injury-free, and most definitely try to take as much pressure off of the goaltenders as possible. The Flyers' defense has been a problem for the past years, ever since the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals, but we'll have to see. If that defense can take the pressure off of the goalies, I think the Flyers definitely will have a good year. And finally, the last question that we'll have to see is definitely the goaltending duo with Steve Mason and Ray Emery. If one goalie is having a bad season, obviously one of them is going to have to pick up for the other. Who knows? Ray Emery played behind Corey Crawford all last year in the Chicago Blackhawks, who did have a good defense. Ray Emery went 17-1, and Steve Mason played very good after changing from Columbus to Philly. Who knows? Maybe Steve Mason just needed a change of scenery, and maybe Ray Emery can help out Steve Mason this year by playing behind him and guiding him through the season. If the defense does its job, I don't think there should be any problem for Steve Mason and Ray Emery this year for the Flyers. Now, what I think will happen this year for the Philadelphia Flyers, obviously I would love a Stanley Cup. However, I don't think the Flyers are going to win the division, but I do still think the Flyers will make it into the playoffs as a bubble team, even though they are in the new Metropolitan Division. I see the Flyers making it into the playoffs once again as maybe like a 4 or 5 seed this year, and possibly going very far into the playoffs, like I said, if the defense can stay under control and the goaltending is very good this year. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed my 2013-2014 season preview for the Philadelphia Flyers. Honestly, I hope the Flyers do very well this year. So like I said, if you enjoyed, leave a like, leave a comment, and as always, subscribe. Let's go, Orange and the Black.
And the 4, 5, 6, our 4 battalions, they take the sing.